Sil wanted me to cover the cost of her expensive anniversary party, so I canceled it. Then my mother-in-law accused me of being jealous. Hey, everyone! So, about 3 weeks ago, my sister-in-law Addison, who's 26, asked me to help her plan her first wedding anniversary party. I'm 30 and I'm an event planner by profession. Normally I charge for my services, but I decided to do this for free because, she's family. I've known Addison for about 5 years, ever since my husband and I started dating, and we've been married for 2 years now. I've always gotten along pretty well with his family until this one incident changed everything. Now it feels like everyone is against me. When Addison first approached me about planning the party, I assumed she or her husband would pay for everything. We never actually discussed the financials, but I figured since I wasn't charging for my time, I wasn't going to foot the bill for the party itself. It was shaping up to be quite extravagant and expensive, so I needed upfront deposits for food and decor. When I mentioned this to Addison, she kept saying she'd pay me back after the party. I had no reason to doubt her because we had a good relationship, and both she and her husband are working professionals. But 3 days before the party, she dropped a bomb on me. She said she actually expected me to cover all the expenses, which is why she hadn't paid me anything yet. I was stunned. We had never had that discussion, and she assumed I would pay because she knew I made good money and so did her brother. Obviously, I panicked. Everything was planned, and she was springing this on me at the last minute. I told her this wasn't acceptable, but she said they were trying to save money because she was pregnant and had quit her job. They wanted to use the party to announce the pregnancy and expected me to understand their financial situation. She even hinted that this could be my gift to her. This just ticked me off because I'd done the calculations and it was a lot of money. Yes, we make a comfortable living and so do they, but that doesn't mean they're entitled to my money. After some arguing, I hung up because she was adamant that I should pay. I told my husband, and he was just as mad. He tried talking to her, but she was stubborn, saying we were rich enough to afford it and couldn't believe we were being so stingy. So I made the tough decision to cancel everything. I had to call all the vendors and explain. They were upset about the last-minute cancellation, so I made up a story about someone falling sick to avoid pissing them off since I work with them a lot. Addison not only messed up my personal life, but could have also caused professional issues if I hadn't lied. I felt I had no reason to look out for her after this, so I prepared an invoice with all the expenses and sent it to her. I even included my charges since she clearly planned to take advantage of me. She called and texted me repeatedly after that, but I didn't respond and eventually blocked her. Then, I started getting calls and messages from So, I had an argument with my in-laws that left me pretty stunned. We've always gotten along well, and this was the first serious fight we've ever had. It really shook me to the core, especially because they sided with her. I mean, she was obviously wrong. She wanted me to foot the bill for everything without even giving me a heads up. And the costs were outrageous. I was completely blindsided at the last minute and had every right to be furious and cancel the whole thing. I tried to explain my position to my in-laws, but they kept insisting that my husband and I were being stingy and miserable. They think just because we make a lot of money, the family is automatically entitled to our resources whenever they need them. How does that even make sense? Addison and her husband aren't struggling financially. They just didn't want to pay for the party themselves because they're the ones being stingy, not us. I was really hoping to get my in-laws to understand my point of view. I don't easily give up on relationships, but after what they said, I don't think I can go back to having a good relationship with them. Out of nowhere, during our argument, my in-laws accused me of being jealous of their daughter and trying to sabotage her party. I was completely blindsided by this and didn't even know how to respond. They thought I was jealous because she was pregnant and I wasn't, and that I canceled everything out of spite when I found out she was going to announce her pregnancy at the party. None of that was true, and it was really insulting for them to even suggest it. At that point, I didn't bother arguing any further. The conversation had just gotten too nasty. I hung up on them and blocked their numbers. Afterwards, I talked to my husband and completely broke down. I hate fighting with people I love, and I had considered my in-laws as family. It was really upsetting that they were treating me like this over something so petty. I even called my parents, and they comforted me, reassuring me that I hadn't done anything wrong. That made me feel a bit better, and I was finally able to sleep around 3 a.m. The next day, I had to go back to work, despite feeling awful. I had sent Addison the invoice, and it was now up to her to pay it so I could settle everything. I was praying she'd send the money soon, because I didn't want to keep everyone waiting and risk my reputation. In the evening, around the time the party was supposed to happen, I got a call from my brother-in-law. I picked up, curious about what he had to say. Surprisingly, he was the only one who apologized for the whole mess. He told me he had no idea Addison planned on making me pay for everything and would have stopped it if he'd known. He even offered to pay me back himself, which was a massive relief. He confided in me that Addison had been acting really entitled lately and had been having issues with almost everyone. He sounded exhausted and frustrated. I tried to comfort him, saying things would get better, but he hinted that if they didn't, he might have to take serious measures, which wouldn't be good for the family. I was shocked because Addison and her husband have been together since their first year of college, even though they only got married a year ago. For him to suggest he might leave her was a big deal. When I got home, I told my husband everything. He was also shocked and wanted to call Addison to warn her so she could change her behavior. But I disagreed. I believe if she's being difficult with everyone, her husband has every right to consider leaving her. Being pregnant doesn't give her a free pass to treat people poorly. She should realize that on her own without us interfering. Plus, after how his family treated me, I don't want anything to do with them right now. So yeah, that's where we stand. I know for sure that if my husband reaches out to his sister to warn her and try to get her to change her behavior, they're going to somehow drag me into the mess because that's how they got the information in the first place. They'll make me the scapegoat. But my husband thinks I'm being too hard on his family, and that regardless of what's happened, we should still tell Addison what her husband said so she can try to make changes or at least talk to him. I don't think it's our place to say anything, and honestly, I don't want to, because I feel she needs to learn that she can't just treat people however she wants and get away with it. We've been arguing about this for the past couple of days, and I'm starting to doubt if I'm right or not. So, am I the asshole for not wanting to warn my pregnant sister-in-law that her husband might leave her if she doesn't change her behavior because I think she needs to learn a lesson? Update 1. First of all, thank you so much for all the comments. My husband and I finally came to a common conclusion after days of fighting, which was really affecting our relationship. We couldn't let this turn us into another version of Addison and her husband, so we decided to talk it out. I was really hurt by how his family treated me, and he acknowledged that it was completely unfair, especially the comments from his parents about me being jealous of Addison and insecure, which they said was why I was trying to sabotage her party. This was totally untrue and unexpected because I had a good relationship with them before this, so their sudden change was hard to take. But he explained that Addison is still his sister, and he couldn't forgive himself if he didn't try to prevent her marriage from falling apart, especially since she's pregnant. I tried to put myself in his shoes and realized I might feel the same way if it were my siblings. So I told him he could talk to Addison if he wanted, but I wasn't going to say anything. He said the main reason he wants to help is because she's expecting, and he knows she tends to act out. But if it's reached a point where her husband can't tolerate it, she needs to know. If no one tells her, she won't change. I pointed out that both of us tried to tell her behavior was not okay when she demanded I pay for the party, but that was more of a yelling match than a calm conversation. This time, my husband wants to have a one-on-one, heartfelt conversation with her. If she still doesn't change, then she's on her own, but he thinks it's worth trying to save her marriage. We're still not speaking to my in-laws until they acknowledge their mistake and apologize to me, which we both agree on. Many people asked what exactly Addison did to make her husband so upset. Well, during the call where he apologized to me, He only said she was being difficult and hinted he might leave if she didn't change. I had a lot going on that day, so I didn't ask for details. I assumed they had marital problems he didn't want to share, and I didn't want to pry. Anyway, my husband is visiting Addison this evening to talk things out. I really hope they can sort everything out because he values his family a lot, and I can't imagine not speaking to my own family. It's been tough for him, and I hope my in-laws realize their mistake and apologize for his sake. I know if it comes down to it, he won't hesitate to cut them off forever, even Addison, if needed. Update 2. So, my husband just came back from Addison's place about an hour ago, and here's the update. Apparently, both Addison and her husband were at home when he arrived. My husband had spoken to Addison beforehand, and she had told him that her husband was flying out. All right, let me break it down for you in a more casual and slightly expanded tone. So, there was supposed to be this business trip today, but it got postponed. Addison totally forgot to tell her husband about it. When he showed up, he decided not to leave without talking to her. I guess her husband figured out why he was really there, so he stayed in the room to be part of the conversation. My husband told me Addison was totally caught off guard when she realized what he wanted to discuss. She thought he was there to apologize for yelling at her on the phone the other day because of our fight. But nope. He spilled the beans about what her husband had said to me. Addison started freaking out on him, and it took both of them to calm her down so they could continue the talk. While Addison and her husband were talking, my husband got to the bottom of why he was so mad. It made sense. I'd be mad too if I were in his shoes. Turns out I was right about Addison trying to pull some entitled acts with other people too, which is why their whole friend circle has ditched them. That must be tough. A few weeks back, Addison went out to lunch with some friends, but her husband didn't go because he was busy with work. Instead of paying for her own meal, she insisted everyone else cover for her because she needed to save for the future. Her friends didn't want to make a scene, so they paid, but later when she invited them to an anniversary party, she told them they had to contribute to the party costs too. That was the final straw, and they all declined the invitations without any explanation. When her husband found out what she'd done, he was furious. They ended up fighting. So when she invited the rest of her family, she didn't ask them to contribute because by then she had a new plan involving me. Things were already tense between Addison and her husband, and our fight just made it worse. On the day we were arguing on the phone, they had fought again because Addison didn't want him to apologize to me or pay me off so soon. Her husband didn't want the situation to drag on because it was embarrassing for him. He blurted out something about wanting to leave her because of her behavior. Addison had a meltdown since she couldn't believe he'd say that after being together for so long. He tried to comfort her but stood his ground, saying he didn't regret what he'd said because of how she'd been acting lately. It was just unacceptable. He said he still wanted to give their relationship a chance and had planned to discuss it after his business trip. But since my husband visited them, he figured now was the right time to talk, believing her brother could help her understand her mistakes. Initially, Addison just cried and wasn't receptive. But once she calmed down, she explained how nervous she was about becoming a mother. She admitted to making hasty decisions because she didn't feel prepared. Instead of mentally preparing herself, she decided to save as much money as possible to at least be financially ready. Clearly, she was distressed. My husband's family has never had money issues, so I don't get why she was so fixated on it. At least she acknowledged her behavior was out of line. There are still many unanswered questions, but my husband and brother-in-law managed to get Addison to realize her behavior was wrong. She said she'd apologize to everyone and hoped we'd accept it. I don't know about her friends, but I will accept her apology. That doesn't mean I'm going back to talking to her. But I see she's struggling mentally, and I don't want to add to her problems. So when her apology comes, I'll accept it but still keep my distance. My husband told me Addison and her husband are going to try couples counseling, and she's going to talk to a pro about her mental health because something's clearly off. She's made some irrational decisions lately, and to avoid that as her pregnancy progresses, she needs professional help. I really hope she gets better and has a healthy pregnancy. Update 3. Hey everyone, it's been 3 months since my last update. I'm still keeping my distance from my in-laws and have had zero contact with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. I'm keeping in touch with Addison just to be civil. My in-laws never apologized for the nasty things they said, and even cut my husband off for siding with me. A couple of weeks after my last update, they emailed him saying they were disappointed he chose me over his family, calling me cold-hearted and saying I'd never be a family woman because my career and business would always come first. So, I guess the past couple of years of them being nice was all an act. It hurts knowing they'd been pretending, but whatever. It's not my loss. I'm sure they'll come crawling back when I get pregnant, but that's a story for another day. So, it's up to me to make the final call. As for Addison, things are looking good with her pregnancy. Ever since she got the help she definitely needed, she's been doing a lot better. She and her husband have managed to work through their issues, and according to what my husband says, she's back to her old self now. She apologized to me a few days after the intervention, explaining that her behavior came from a really dark place and that she was going to seek help. I wished her the best. And that was that. We didn't talk for a couple of weeks after that, but then she texted me about 2 weeks ago to let me know she was doing better and wanted to rebuild our relationship. She admitted she was the one who messed things up between us, but she genuinely valued what we had and wanted to work on it. I told her I'd think about it. At first, I was a bit skeptical, but she respected my boundaries, so we started talking again. This time, I really hope it lasts because other than that one incident, she's always been a really great person. Anyway, that's how things have been working out, and I'm pretty happy with the way things are right now.